We will look through specific examples here, starting with British Columbia, which imposed a carbon tax starting in 2008, set at $10 and per ton of carbon, and set to increase $5 per ton per year until the tax reached $30 per ton in 2012. And a priori, it was decided revenues were to be returned to people. Something of a puzzle why most regulators remain reliant on command-based rules when economists agree that carbon taxes are simpler, easier to enforce, and accomplish the environmental goal at a much lower cost. So that dichotomy, or the idea of command-based policy by regulators, is that they feel they are in control. They have a rule, they can enforce it, and they can add exceptions if necessary. As soon as you leave it to the markets, they feel that they have no control on it. Whereas economists who are very big fans of market-based forces solving everything think that market does take care of everything. Obviously, not every economist agrees with that either. Okay, so the negative aspect of British Columbia legislation was that the agriculture was exempt from it. So even though they had ways of reducing emissions, either in the input or in terms of methane and so on, it was not somehow included, was given an exception which reduces cost effectiveness in the sense that there is one sector that's freely emitting without paying a price. Many economists have studied the choice between simple dividend check, where you collect revenues from carbon taxes and you redistribute it as dividend. This actually worked in the case of British Columbia because the opposition to the carbon tax in the beginning, which directly started showing up as gas price at the pump and so on, slowly went away when people began to receive dividends. Okay. The other option is reducing existing taxes like sales taxes and income taxes as a way to return carbon tax revenue to people. And the argument here is that reducing existing taxes is more efficient because in general the tax revenues, once they reach the hand of the government, distort the economy because they can be moved, spent elsewhere, and the free market forces are not allowed to operate. So the idea that we should add here again is whether there is like a Kuznets curve, in this case called the Laffer curve for carbon tax. If you increase the tax rate, tax revenues go up, but at some point they become inefficient. The cost of accumulating tax into cost of the products and passing it on to customers, or the way government handles it and various other reasons actually begin to reduce the tax revenue because people may just get tired of paying higher and higher tax for something, like let's say going to a national park. That's not a tax, but that's kind of a price you pay anyways for government maintained facility. So there are ideas that tax rate cannot be increased forever because at some point tax revenues begin to decrease. Looking at translating British Columbia's $30 per ton carbon tax from 2012 onwards into various fuel types, gasoline 4.4%, diesel, propane, natural gas was much higher because overall its carbon footprint was much higher apparently. And coal, of course, the king of polluters, had more than 50%, almost 55% carbon tax as a percentage of final fuel price. That's a good motivation to reduce coal burning. Delayed carbon tax increase. So in response to COVID-19, British Columbia actually froze its tax rate at its current level of $40 per ton of CO2 equivalent until further notice. So this was in 2020. COVID-19 action plan takes further steps to boost income supports by increasing and expanding the British Columbia Climate Action Credit in July. So you get a tax credit for doing climate action and reducing your emission, like rooftop solar or wind or other activities. So that also came into effect. As many as 86% of British Columbians will see some extra money from this enhancement. This is directly from the British Columbia government's website. So tax rates by fuel, different fuels generate different amounts of greenhouse gas emissions. April 2019 carbon tax rate of $40 per ton in British Columbia translates based on the type of fuel used. So gasoline, this is a tax rate of $40 per ton of emission. 8.89 cents per liter, diesel and natural gas. Okay, so even though the rate here looks different, the emission-based rates are here. So the idea is that this is a carbon tax. It's a market-based policy, as we discussed before. So it is cost-effective. Exceptions are the agriculture, which reduces cost effectiveness, but you do it by a fossil fuel type, which motivates you to, let's say, go from a diesel car, which is more polluting. It's more fuel efficient because of the way it works, but it's more emitting. So you would switch to a gasoline car, and heating at home, maybe you would switch from natural gas to solar or gasoline and so on. So an example where the carbon tax is supposed to be working. Started with resistance, but the way dividends are distributed after the revenue is collected makes it more acceptable. Market forces working.